Hello everyone. So today we'll be covering the second part of lists. In the first part, we looked at how to create lists and how to index lists. So if we want to get a particular item within a list, we use the indexing operation. So we looked at how to do that. Then we looked at the slicing operation. So if we want to get a sublist of a list, we use a slicing operation. We'll get a slice of that list. And then we looked at the concatenation and replication techniques, like how do you concatenate two lists and how do you replicate a list. Okay, that was the first part. So now we'll go further, we'll dive deeper into lists. Okay, so the first thing that we shall look at is the len function. Okay, so the len function is used to get the length of a list. Fine. So for example, consider I have this list, my list, which is 1 Hari and 2 3 4. So if I try to print the length of my list using this function len, so write the name of this function and within parenthesis just pass the whole list. So you will get 5, or you can even directly pass a list. So if I say so the length of this list is 6. Okay. Now removing items from a list. So we can use the del statement for removing items or for deleting items at an index in a list, at an index. I have just repeated this word index twice. So all the items in the list after the deleted item will be moved up one index. Okay. So let us look at an example. So consider this list, my list is 1 Ram, 2 and Shyam. So now let us see how this deletion operation works like. So if I uncomment these two lines, so here I'm using this del keyword and then I'm saying my list 0. So I want to delete the item at the 0th index. So let me see, and after this I am printing. So I'm printing. Let me run this piece of code. So here you see that the item 1 which was at index 0 has been deleted. Now we only have these three items, Ram, 2 and Shyam. Okay. Now if I run this piece of code, del my list 1. So now right now my list has only these three elements. So now when I say delete the item at the first index, so that will refer to this number 2. Okay. So now if I run this code after this print statement, so the item 2 must have been deleted. So you can see that we only have these two items, Ram and Shyam. Okay, so that is how you can use the del statements to delete items in a list. Okay. The next very important concept, one of the most frequent concept or technique that you will be using is how to use for loops to iterate over lists. Okay. So earlier we have looked at how to use for loops with the range function. Okay, so if you want to run a block of code 5 times, so we saw how to use the range 5 function. Okay, so for example, if I want to print hello Hari 5 times, so I'll put this in the body of a for loop, for I in range 5. If I put this inside and if I run this, so this will get printed 5 times. Okay, so this is the kind of application that we have looked at till now. But technically how a for loop actually works is it runs a block of code once for each time in a list value. So if we look at the value which is returned by range object, if you look at the data type of that value, to see that we can use this type function. So let us see let us print what is the type returned by range value. So it is of the type range data type. Okay. So this range data type is actually similar to a list. So for example, range 4 is similar to the list 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay. So here for I in range 4, if I print I, so I get 0, 1, 2, 3. So I can exactly do this even to this list 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay. So assume that I have this list L equals 0, 1, 2, 3. So I can write this for loop for I in L, print I. So what this does is I will take in a sequence first the value 0 in the first iteration of the loop. Then in the next iteration of the loop, I will take the value 1. In the next iteration, it will take 2. And in the last iteration, it will take 3. Okay. Now if I print this, you can see that I get 0, 1, 2, 3. Similarly, assume I have to write this program. I have a list of fruits, apple, mango, banana and grape, which I can serve as fruit juices. Okay, so these are the fruit juices which are available in my juice shop, for example, and I want to print this menu. I can do this using a for loop. So I'll say for fruit in fruit juice menu. So now what happens is that in each iteration of this for loop, this fruit variable, first it will take the value apple in the first iteration. In the second iteration, it will take the value mango. In the third iteration, it will take the value banana and so on. Okay. Now, so inside the body of this for loop, I can simply write a print statement. I serve name of the fruit and juice. So I'll use the format method and I'll just pass the fruit to this. Now if I print this, you see that I get I serve apple juice, I serve mango juice, I serve banana juice and I serve grape juice. Okay. So what is happening when I write my for loop like this is that this fruit variable in each iteration. So there is a slight mistake here. I wrote server instead of serve. So now you see that this is how this gets printed. Now let us look at a different example of using for loops with lists. So find the maximum number in a list of numbers. Okay. So let us try to write this maximum function. This takes as input list L and it returns the maximum of all the numbers in that list. Fine. So how can I do this? So to store my maximum, let me take a variable called maximum number. Okay. Now I'm making this assumption that all the numbers in my list. So to store my maximum, I'll define a variable called maximum number. Okay. So now I have to initialize this variable. Okay. Right now it is not clear to me exactly what I should initialize this variable. Initialize variable here. It is not clear. Should I put this value as 0? Should I put it? What is the value that I should initialize my maximum number? Right now it is not very obvious to me. So I'll do that later. Now what I want to do is I want to take a for loop. So for number in. So I'll look at each number inside my list of numbers and I'll compare it with the maximum number. So what I want to do is this is the idea for the solution. Look at each number in the list L and compare it with the maximum number. If the number is greater than maximum number, then so if the number is greater than maximum number, then update the maximum number. So basically, assume that my current maximum number is 2, and if I find a number 3 inside my list, okay, so when I compare 3 with 2, obviously 3 is greater than 2, so we'll update my maximum number to be 3. Okay, that is the idea of the solution. So for number in L, if number greater than maximum number, so what happens? This becomes my new maximum number. Maximum number is number, right? So what does this maximum number do? Holds the current value of the maximum number, or I can say holds the maximum of all numbers seen till now. Okay, so once I exit the loop, that means I have looked at all the numbers. So whatever number is in the maximum number, that should be the maximum of all the numbers in the list, right? So now the question is, what should I initialize my maximum number to? So naturally, one of the options is that you initialize it to be the first number of the list. Okay, just put it as the first number of the list, because that is the first number which I am going to look at, and I am saying holds the maximum of all numbers seen till now. So I can initialize my variable to the first number in the list. Initialize variable to the first number in the list. Fine. So this is my function. Now let me try to, now in a function, one thing that you have to always remember is you have to return the answer, right? So I'll return maximum number outside the for loop, because once I exit the for loop, that means I've looked at the complete list, all the numbers, and now inside my maximum number will be the maximum of all those numbers. So let me just print maximum of, let me randomly put some numbers. Okay. So in this the maximum is 12. So you can see that here we get our maximum to be 12. So this is how you use a for loop with a list. In each iteration, this number will take one number from L. So in the first iteration, its value will be value of number will be 3. In the second iteration, value of number will be 4. In the third iteration, value of number will be 7. And like we can actually see what is happening here. You can print maximum number and number. So you can see that first it sees the value 3. Okay, let me print this outside here. Yes. Okay, not outside the for loop, but inside the for loop, outside the if condition. Yeah. So you see that first it sees the value 3 and its maximum is also 3. As soon as it sees the value 4, which is greater than 3, it has updated the maximum also to 4. And then it sees the value 7, it has updated again. 9 it has updated again. 12 it has updated again. Now it is seeing 3, but since 12 is greater than 3, it has not updated. It has still kept it as 12, and finally it is returning 12. Fine. Now, okay, so this was actually mentioned in the feedback. One of the very good feedback that I received was to give some practice problems right within this lesson. Okay, you will separately do assignments also, but this is for your own practice. As soon as you've seen me do an example, you can right away do a practice problem. Okay, So the practice problem here is find the average of a list of numbers. Okay, so basically you have to write this function average, which takes a list of numbers L, and you have to write your code here, and it returns the average. Okay, AVG is the average of all the numbers in L. For example, assume L is 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So the average of all these numbers will be equal to 3. So average of L should return 3. Okay, so this is the function that you are supposed to write using a for loop. Fine, this is for your own practice. Now let us go to the next question, next concept, which is combining len and range. This is a common technique. So assume you have this names list of names. The names are Hari, Madhav, Govind and Ram. Okay. So here I want to print at position and position of that name inside that list is what is the actual name. Okay, so I want two things. One is what is the index of this element in the list, and also what is the element actual element. So for example, here the index of this element is 0 and the index of the item is 0 and the actual item is Hari. Index of this item is 1 and the item is Madhav. Index of this item is Govind and the item is index of the item is 2 and the item is Govind. Index of this item is 3 and the item is Ram. Okay, so when I need both the index of an element and the element itself, so there I will combine usage of range and len. Okay, so to iterate over this list, I'll say for I in range, I'll say length of names. Okay, so basically if you want to run a loop 5 times, here you will say range of 5, right? So instead of that, I want to run the loop once for each element in the list. So basically I want to run it length of names, whatever is the length of that list, so many times I want to run. So that is why I am passing length of names to range. Okay, but this time, okay, let me just show you what is the difference. If I say for I in names, print I, so I'll get Hari, Govind, Vasudev, Madhav and Damodar. Okay, let me just run this. Yes, if I for I in names, if I print I, I'll get Hari, Madhav, Govind and Ram. Fine. But what happens if I for I in range length of names print I? So here, because I'm using the range function returns numbers. So here I'll also be printing numbers. So I'll print 0, 1, 2, 3. So this is the difference between when I say range length of names and when I say names directly. So if I want both simultaneously within a loop, so there also I'll use range length of names, and basically I want to print this at position something is something, and inside this format I'll pass the index I for the position, and to get the actual item I'll just use the indexing operation. I'll say names I. So at position 0 is Hari, at position 1 is Madhav, 2 is Govind and 3 is Ram. So to make this more clear, let us look at an example where you actually need both the index of an element and the actual item, right? So here I am asking the question, find the index in a list where an element, or let me say where an item is repeating. Okay, so assume that I have this list L equals 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 6, 8. So here you see that this item 6 is repeating twice, right? So I want to find the index in the list where this is repeating. So here if you see, this is the index 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4. So at index 4 and 5 the item is repeating, right? So this is what I want to find out, where exactly it is repeating. So how will I write that program? So let me try to write a function repeating index, and to that I'll pass a list L. So this is one example where I need both the index and the actual item. Okay, so I'll use for I in range length of L. So what will I check? Okay, so one thing, so basically what I want to check here is whether the current item is the same as the previous item. Okay, so this I will take the value 0, 1, 2, 3 and so on, right? So I is basically my index. I loops over the index values 0, 1, 2 and so on, right? So I is my current index. So I'll compare if L of I is equal to L of I minus 1. Okay, whatever is the current item, if it is the same as the previous item, that means I have found the place where actually an item is repeating, right? So I'll say, let me call my repeating index as R. R holds repeating. So I can initialize my R to none. So because till now I have not seen any repeating index, so I'll put it as none, and this I'll say is I minus 1. Okay, so basically when I come to this 6 here, I'll see that this is equal to the previous element. Okay, so when I get such a place where elements are repeating, I want to report the index of the first repeating element. So that is why I'm saying R is I minus 1, and because I have found one place where the element is item is repeating, I can simply break out of the loop here. So that is all we have to do, right? But there is one thing that you need to be careful, that is, so here I starts from 0, right? So when I'm actually looking at the first element, this comparison will be wrong, because when I is equal to 0, I'm comparing L0 and L0 minus 1. So that becomes L minus 1, which is the last element of the list, right? But I don't want to do this comparison. So to avoid that, what I can do is, instead of starting from 0, I can start my loop from 1. Okay, the benefit of this is that I can avoid this corner case where when I start from 0, there is a problem where this condition will have a different meaning than what I intend it to be. Okay, so now I'll return R. Fine. So if I run this repeating index on my list, so you can see that I'm getting the answer 4, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Fine. Next question, this is again for your own practice. Find the indices in a list where the item is a multiple of 7. Okay, so multiple 7, you must write this function which takes a list and it returns all the indices. Okay, so I'm calling indices 7 list of all indices where the item is a multiple of 7. So for example, Suppose your list is 2, 3, 7, 4, 14, 9. So there are two multiples of 7 in this. One is 7 itself and one is 14. So multiple 7 should return this list. This is at index 2 and this is at index 4. 2 comma 4. Okay, so please try to write this function. Okay, so now I want to explain about in and not in operators. Okay, so here we looked at this in keyword, which is used in a for loop, right? But in can also be used as an operator, as a binary operator. So in and not in, these are two binary operators. So they connect two values, an item to search for and a list in which that item may be found. Okay, the expression evaluates to true if the item is present in the list and evaluates to false if the item is not present in the list. Okay, so example, let us look at an example that will make this clear. So assume that I have a list of names Hari, Govinda, Madhava and Damodara. Fine. So now let me see what happens when I try to print this. I am trying to print Govinda in names. Okay, so what I'm saying, basically I'm saying this string Govinda in names. So this will return true if this string is present within this list, and if it is not present within the list, it will return false. Let us see what this prints. So this is printing true because Govinda is actually present within this list names. Fine. So similarly, if I try to print Rama in names, you will see that this list does not have the string Rama. So this prints false. So that is how this in operator works. If this operand on the left hand side, if it is present within the list, it will return true, otherwise it will return false. So next, similarly, this not in operator works in the opposite way. So this Shyama is not actually present in this names list. Okay, so Shyama not in names should return true, whereas Damodar is present in the names list. So Damodar not in names should return false. So it returns false. So that is how this in and not in operators work. So let us look at a problem where they will be useful. Okay, so create a list of numbers. So assume that I have this list 2, 5, 9, 11, 13. Okay. Now my task is create a list of all numbers from 1 to 20 which are not in L. Okay. So I'll create a list with the name not L. Okay, and I'll initialize it to an empty list. Initialize to empty list. Fine. So now I have to find all the numbers from 1 to 20 which are not in L. So for example, 2 is in L, 3 is not in L. So all the numbers which are not in L, those I have to put in this not L. Fine. So naturally we'll use a for loop. So I'll say for num in range 20, but I want to start from 1 because here it is saying 1 to 20 and I have to go till 20, so I'll go till 21. So you know that whatever is the upper limit of a range, we do not actually go till there, we stop one step before. So that is why, because we want to go till 20, so I am going till 21 so that we stop at 20. Fine. So now what I'll do, for each number I'll check whether it is in L. If it is in L, I'll ignore that number. If it is not in L, I'll put it in this not L list. Fine. So how will I check? For this, I'll use this in operator. So I'll say for if num in L, or I actually should use the not in operator. If num not in L, then I'll say L equals L plus. So basically, sorry, not L. I must I must add these values to not L, so that I can do using the concatenation operation. So not L plus, inside this I'll pass num. So I'm creating a single list with a single item, which is num, and I'm concatenating it with the list not L. So this will get added to the list, so that num gets added to the list not L. Okay. Now if I print not L, so you can see I have all the numbers from 1 to 20. For example, 1 is not present, 3, 4, 6, etc., which are not in L. Fine. So this is how not in as an operator, one example where not in as an operator is used. Fine. Moving on, let us look at the next concept. Let us look at methods on lists. Okay. So what is a method? A method is the same as a function, except it is called on a value. Okay. And the method call comes after a value and is separated by a dot or a full stop or period. So what is a method? So you've already looked at functions. For example, len is a function which we looked at in the beginning of this. So len is a function. So how do you call a function? Like you'll write the name of the function, and within parenthesis you will pass the parameters to that function. That is what a simple function is. But what is a method? A method is also a function, but it is called on a particular value of a particular data type. Okay. So for example, lists have a method called as an index method. Okay, so what this index method does is, it will find the index of an item if it is present within that list. So suppose I have my list 1, 2, 3. Okay, so this is my list. Now if I do L dot index of 2, because 2 is present in the list, so this is giving me the actual index. So this is present at the index 1. So this is giving me index 1. Okay, so this is an example of a method. So I cannot call a method. I cannot simply say index and pass some arguments to it. That will not work. I have to call this function on this list, on this particular value L. So L dot index, what this does is, this will apply this function to this list using this argument. So it will search inside this list for this item and it will return the index. So that is what a method is. Instead of calling it separately on its own, it is called on a value of a particular data type. For example, index is a method on lists, so it can be called on any value of the list type. Fine. So that is what the index list is. And if the item is not present in the list, this method will throw an error called the value error. So we can see here, if I uncomment this, so names.index Govinda, this is present at the first index. Similarly, this is present at the, this is not present in the list. So if I run this for this, you'll see that you get a value error. Murari is not in list. Fine. And so what if an item is present multiple times within a list? Let us look at an example. Suppose L is 1, 2, 2, 3, 3. Fine. So 3 is present twice. So now if I do L dot index of 3, so I get the value 2. So basically I get the first instance or the first index at which this item is present. That is what is returned by this index method. So it is present both at index 2 and index 3, but it will return only the first index. Fine. So next we'll look at two methods, append method and insert method. So these are used to add new items to a list. Fine. Append method adds an item at the end of a list, and insert method can be used to add an item at any index in a list. So let us look at how this append method works. I have this list of names again, Hari, Govinda, Madhava and Damodara. So here I am saying names dot append Murari, and now I want to print this list of names. So you see that this item Murari has been added to the end of the list. So what this append method does is it adds items to the end of the list. Now here what I am saying is I want to now here I am using this insert method. So in insert method you have to pass two arguments. First is what is the index at which you want to insert this item, and next is what is the item itself that you want to insert. So here I am saying I want to insert an item at this index 2. So 0, 1, 2. So right now Madhav is present at index 2, but I want to put this Vasudev at index 2. Let us see what happens. So here you see that Vasudev is now at index 2 and Madhav has been shifted to index 3. All the items which come after this have been shifted by one index. Okay, so this is very simple. That is how insert method works. Now one thing that you need to be very careful, this is a mistake that you will often make, is modifying lists in place versus creating a new list. Okay, for example, here you saw that we are not saying, what we are not saying is names is names dot append Ram. Okay, we simply said names dot append Murari instead of saying names equals names dot append Murari or names dot append Ram. Let us see what happens if we say this and print names. So you see that names has become none. Why is this? Because the append function, let me write here, or let me write in append and insert functions do not return anything. They return none value. They change the lists in place. Okay, so these append and insert functions, they do not return any value. Okay, so when I say names dot append, so you know that functions always return something, and if the function does not return anything, it will return the none value, right? So these append and insert functions, they do not return anything. That is why if you say names equals names dot something, names dot append, so what will happen is because they return the none value, this none value will be assigned to names. But that is not what we want to happen, right? We want this names list just to be added by this item Ram. Okay. So instead of doing this, I should simply say names dot append Ram or names dot append Murari. So if I copy paste this list here, if I say names dot append Ram, so what this will do is this will actually go to the place where that list is and change that in place. And if I print names, so now you will see that this has been appended. Okay, so please do not make this mistake of doing names is names dot append. Whereas if you look at this, names is names plus Ram. What if I say names is names plus Murari or Ram? So names plus Ram, what happens when I do names plus Ram is an entire new list is created. Created and assigned to names. So that is why in this case, because this value does not evaluate to none, that is why names also does not become none. Sorry. So you will see that Ram has been added again, because this the sum of these two lists, it does not evaluate to none, it actually evaluates to this list. So a new list is created which has this value, and this has been assigned to names. Okay, so that is the difference between this concatenation operation where and using this append method. So when you use the append method, you do not actually say names equals names dot append, you will simply say names dot append. Whereas if you're using this concatenation operation, there you have to say names is names plus this list containing Ram, and not simply names plus list containing Ram. For example, here if I simply say names plus Shyam, so this will not actually update the list names. So you will see that Shyam has not been added. Here if you want to add Shyam, you have to say names equals names plus Shyam. So this is the difference between changing a value in place versus creating a new value. So we'll discuss this topic more in detail later, but for now please just remember that when using this append function, you do not actually do an assignment operation. Fine. Now you can use this reverse method to reverse the values of a list. For example, I have this list L. So if I do L dot reverse, so I'll get the reverse list 4321. Again, reverse changes list in place. So do not use assignment operation on top of it. That means do not say L equals L dot reverse. If I do this and if I print L, I'll get none value, because reverse does not return anything. It changes this list in place. So I should not do this. Okay. Do not do this. Similarly, here I'll say do not. So next we have a problem, similar problem to previous. So I have a list L which has many numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 9, 11, 4, 24. Okay. So now create a list of even numbers from that list. Okay. So from this list, I want to take out all the even numbers and create a new list. So events, I'll create a empty list called events initially. Next, what I'll do, I'll use a for loop for I in L. So basically what I'll do is I'll look at each element in this list L, and if it is an even number, I'll add it to this list events. Okay. So this is my strategy. Look at each item in L, and if it is even, add it to events list. Fine. So for I in L, how will I check if number is even? I'll just say I% 0. This is 0, that means that number is an even number. So I'll say events dot, and I can use the append method to add new items to a list. So I'll say, if I print this events, so you can see that 2, 4, 6 and 24, these are the only 4 even numbers from this whole list. So those I've got in this separate list of events. Fine. So now there is a practice problem for you. So you have a list of lists. Suppose your list is 1, 2, 3 and Ram, A, B, and 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. So this list L has 4 other lists, right? 1, 2, 3, and 4. So create another list of lists which only contains lists with length greater than 3. So you have to create a different lists. Let us say this is M. So this should have only these 2 elements. Contains only lists with length. So the length of this list is 1. The length of this list is 2. This is 4 and this is 3. Right? Let me say greater than or equal to. Or equal to 3. So only these 2 lists qualify for that. So those you have to put in a separate list M. So write a program which can do that. Fine, this is for your practice. So okay, so that was all about lists. Okay, so list is a long topic. You may need to go through this material again. So basically we have looked at how to create a list, how to index elements, how to slice elements, how to concatenate. Then today we looked at the length method. We looked at how to delete elements from a list. Then we looked at how to use for loops with lists. Okay. So these are all the main concepts in lists. There are other concepts are also, but which are more advanced and which you don't require right now. So that covers our portion of lists. Now there is another data type which is called as the tuple data type. So this tuple data type behaves exactly like list data type. Okay. So for example, you can use the length method on it. You can iterate over it using a for loop. Okay. And you can do concatenation operation on it. So there are many things in which the tuple data type is exactly the same as a list data type. Okay. But the only 2 differences are that how you create a tuple data type is using parenthesis instead of square brackets. Okay. So if I want to create a tuple T, I'll say for a list, I'll say L equals 1, 2. List of 2 numbers. But whereas for tuple, I'll use this parenthesis. Tuple of 2 numbers. Okay. So that is what is one difference. And now on this, I can, just like I say length of print length of L. Similarly, I can say comma length of T. So this len function works on both, and you can say that length of both is 2. But the one main difference is that tuple is what we call an immutable data type. Okay. So we'll look at what is the difference between these mutable and immutable data types in more depth later. But for now, it is sufficient for you to remember that when a data type is immutable, you cannot change its value. Okay. So for example, consider this list L, its value is 1, 2. Okay. So now I can actually change the value of this list. That means I can say L1 equals 3 and I can say print L. Now the value of this list, value of this value has been changed in place. Okay. It has become 1, 3 now. Whereas if I try to do that same thing for a tuple, if I say T1 equals 3, Python will give an error. Python will say tuple object does not support item assignment. Okay. This operation is not supported because tuples are immutable. Okay. So we'll look at what immutability is in more depth later. But for now, just know that you cannot do this kind of an assignment operation on tuples. Okay. You can only, once you create a tuple value, you cannot change it. So next is finally we can conclude by this list and tuple functions. So suppose I have a tuple 1 comma 2 comma 3. If I want to convert it into a list, so I can say L is list of t, print L. So convert list to tuple. And similarly, if I want to convert it back to a tuple, you can use the tuple function. Sorry, convert. To convert tuple to list, you will use the list function, and to convert list to tuple, you will use the tuple function. So this is how this works. So initially I defined this tuple t, then I converted it into a list and I printed it. So you can see that the first statement that is printed is a list, and next I converted it again to a tuple using the tuple function, and I got out a tuple. Okay. So that now we are done with the our discussion of lists. There are few topics that we'll dive into more depth later, like mutable and immutable data types. But for now, this is all that you need to do about lists. Thank you.